tell me when everybody's good to go. So, Paul Babeu, I serve as the sheriff of Pinal County, and what started out as a report of missing persons, both of Mike and Tina, who there's a lot of community interest. Certainly, these past 10 days have been a roller coaster for the family. And I first want to start out just expressing our sincere sympathy for the family, for the victims, and for our community who have paid special attention to this case. And we want to keep that in mind as we're talking about this very sad news. Started out 10 days ago on the 21st and 22nd as a missing persons case, and it ends up being a double homicide case. And we have the prime suspect, Jose Valenzuela, who is in our jail right next door, who is being charged with first-degree murder times two counts of that. And he's being held on a $2 million cash bond. So they actually have to come up with $2 million in order for the release. There was talk, mention, many of you have seen that there was a second person of interest that was taken into custody for questioning. It appears at this time there's a lot of different leads, a lot of different information. It has been evolving very quickly. Our effort specifically for him was to look at the statements that we had from the prime suspect, Jose Valenzuela, and talk to this secondary person who lived at that residence, from our understanding, and who had some information. And some of this is conflicting. So this is where, bear in mind that this will be evolving. There'll be different stories, different information, and the course of a methodical, very deliberate investigation. And this is why it takes some time. We operate in the realm of physical evidence, forensics, actual statements, and that's law enforcement. We have to keep in mind we're building a case that the county attorney can build and prosecute not just on reasonable suspicion or probable cause, which is when we make an arrest, but beyond a reasonable doubt. So we want to ensure for the victims, for both Mike and Tina, for their surviving family, they are also victims, that justice is served here. Let me back up just a little bit. We saw that a car was found in the desert. Somebody had already asked me, hey, did it look like foul play, right from the beginning? When you have cases like this and missing persons, most of the time they are truly missing persons. And I, as a patrol officer, have countless times been called by parents and my son or my daughter, or this person is missing, and almost always that person ends up coming back. And there's either miscommunication or there was strife somewhere, and it ends up getting resolved in the positive. This is a tragic case where both of these individuals, Mike and Tina, were murdered. And we do have the murder weapon, which is a .22 caliber revolver that was used. What happened, and you'll be given a Form 4 that's redacted if you don't already have that. And basically, yesterday, this is where we were building up to this point. We were following up with an additional interview with Jose Valenzuela. And he called up prior to the interview, talked to one of my investigators and said, hey, I'm not coming in. And the deputy had pressed him further for information, and essentially he confessed. Essentially, he said all this information about killing both Mike and Tina, and there was a conversation that ensued. We immediately dispatched a patrol response and detectives to that residence, and he was held up both at the house and in a shed area. We had one of our investigators had talked with him, got further information to determine that the decedents were buried on that property, very close to the house, almost within feet of the residence. And he had a weapon on him at the time, the actual murder weapon, and he was taken into custody without incident. That's going to prove to be very helpful to our case, we believe, rather than many times cases like this, the suspect may end up getting in a shootout or some act of violence or against themselves, so which cuts off any type of conclusion for not just for the victims, for the case, and many times, and for the surviving victims. And so that's a good turn in the case. So good work on our detectives and the SWAT response and others who helped us with that. We immediately obtained a search warrant on this property. We had visited that property prior to that. That's somebody else had asked that question. Jose Valenzuela actually borrowed from an acquaintance, not a friend, we're clear to mention, a backhoe. And he said, hey, I've got some materials on my property I have to move. And instead what he did is he built not a makeshift grave, an actual 6-foot grave. And he put these victims in that grave after and buried them. And so that process took some time in order to recover and to preserve all of that evidence, and that's where some of you have already reported on that. Why don't I conclude there? There's a lot of other information and some information. Just caution you that it's evolving and that everything's not complete. We have 2 bodies that, and we believe that they've been positively identified. They're now in the custody of the medical examiner. A full autopsy will be performed to determine the cause and manner of death. Nobody in law enforcement determines that. And then we'll be able to find out some additional information that will help clarify if there's conflicting information, both by statements, by the suspect, by witnesses, and how that matches up to physical evidence and forensics.
Paul, can you give us some idea of the connection between the couple and the suspect?
Yes. What we're told, and I'm going to caution this is the suspect who did confess a lot of this information, that he had said that they had, our understanding, a 2-year relationship or friendship with Mike and Tina, and that he had said that they had been engaged in drug use with one another. And the actual drug is methamphetamine, and this is by him. And so the reason why I caution everybody is we want to make sure that, out of respect, not just for those victims, but for the family, that actual forensic evidence and the toxicology that will come back will actually determine that beyond a reasonable doubt.
Is it his story then that they? I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Is it his assertion then that there was a money deal gone bad here between the 2 parties?
Our understanding is that this is recreational use for this dangerous drug, and not, from our understanding at this point, not in something that's of a higher level of dealing and trading, where some people have put out there and on social media, I'm not saying members of the media, but have suggested that, oh God, this could be connected to the drug cartels or something else. We don't believe that's the case. In fact, that we believe that these individuals, and Jose Valenzuela is a U.S. citizen, and this is his family's house. Our understanding that it's his father's house. He had lived there for a long period of time, more recently with his family, with his wife, and I believe 3 or 4 children.
So the question again is motive.
Motive is the fact that you have recreational drug users, at least by the admission of Jose Valenzuela for himself, right? And not pointing to state of mind, but he's saying that he brought them some methamphetamine early in the day. So we've got the 21st, which is Father's Day, that he actually is saying that he was at their residence for a Father's Day party. That later, sometime later that evening, not the 22nd, later that evening, they went over to Valenzuela's home. And something happened, a fight ensued, and that's when he brandished a weapon, and that's where the story changes. We do have some corroborating information from the witness, but not in terms of him being directly involved. And so that's a difference.
In your narrative,
Mike.
Paul, it says that they went to his home and there was a struggle between Mike and Jose. I mean, but you're charging first-degree murder. Is it,
correct.
I'm curious to know. I mean, if the victims went to the home of this man and got into a fight with him at his residence, aside from the drug issues, does this rise to the level of a first-degree murder? Is this guy going to be able to turn around and say, they came to my home, they started a fight, and this was self-defense?
Yes, we believe so, and that's our determination. Could be completely different, Mike, from what the county attorney, the prosecutor actually says. This is what we have for evidence. This is the likelihood of conviction, right? And so that may change, but we believe that we have that evidence to charge for first-degree murder for both counts. And as you can see in the probable cause, even the witness, Felix, is talking about that his observations and what he saw, and that there was some time in between the first shooting and the second shooting, and he tried to even interject himself into that to try to stop Jose Valenzuela from continuing, and that's when the witness is saying that he feared for his life and then fled the residence.
And who was the first victim?
Would be Mike.
Sheriff,
Yes.
you believe the suspect, was he high on methamphetamine at the time?
Yes, that's our belief. Correct.
And both of the victims were shot multiple times? I mean,
No, from what we understand at this point, the only thing that we're going to say is at least once, right? And so we're going to leave that to the medical examiner to do a thorough forensic investigation and autopsy that will determine with exact information what all happened, the cause of death, and how many gunshots were involved.
Do you believe that the suspect got them out, killed them in the car, drove the car away from his property and left it? I mean, what's the connection with the
No. We do believe that they were killed at or nearby in the residence of Jose Valenzuela, and that at some point they were taken outside, whether in a shed, and then eventually buried on the property almost immediately next to the house. And then, and then additionally, somebody else asked earlier, well, how do you not see a freshly buried grave? Because this isn't a makeshift, like there's a mound of dirt. There was other debris and items that were placed on top of this area in this, you know, you see the desert, and you see that quite often. And that's what it looked like.
Sheriff, did
Yes, sir.
Valenzuela help with the search effort during the week or so that they were reported missing, or did he just handle himself?
That I don't know. You know, I'm not certain of that, if he was involved or not.
Is there any evidence, I know we don't have toxicology
Yes.
at this point, but is there any evidence, you had qualified your statements about this is his story, suspect's story.
Correct.
But is there any evidence that you can speak to related to the victims using meth?
We do have some information, and because, as I mentioned earlier, the case continues to evolve, and we're still gathering other information, not just statements, but other information and evidence, that we're not going to share that at this time. And but we do believe that there was drug use involved, at least by the prime suspect who we have in custody, by his own admission, and some other information that we have.
Sheriff, you're
Yes.
saying that Mr. Valenzuela, you communicated with him over the telephone, and he basically made it an admission, and that's when you guys sent in the force.
Yes.
So he initially admitted to you over the telephone during the conversation.
Not with me personally,
No,
but
I
with one of
understand,
our
with one of your
investigators, and because he didn't want to come in for this additional follow-up interview, because we were tracking him.
He knew he was being sought.
He knew he was being tracked, and this is where oftentimes there's a lot of, because we've dealt with a number of, we've had 4 homicides just this year. We've had 8 last year. Our clearance rate is 100% this year. So we have, our detectives are top-notch. Last year, it's 75%, well above the national average. So our detectives, we were on this fast. And we, even though it may not appear to some, certainly maybe even the victims, the surviving victims, and hey, is enough being done. But we have to operate in that realm of gathering and building, almost like you're building a house, and building to the point where you have enough for us to say, because it was some time before we said we suspect foul play. Because once you announce that, suspects, witnesses, everybody behaves differently. And so we wanted to ensure that we were at a safe place in the investigation to be able to make such a statement.
Can you tell me where in this chronology of this 10, 11-day period, when did Mr. Valenzuela come up on the radar screen?
Very early on. It's almost my understanding, within the first 24 hours, that he was somebody that not only the family had told us of their suspicion, but also from all the information that we were looking at. You'll also see that in the vehicle that there was blood, not evident to the naked eye, but with forensic testing, that we found blood that we believe is Mike's blood.
Did that get there by the person whoever moved it from Mr. Valenzuela's home to that other location? Was that blood then deposited by that person?
Very likely.
Is that what
And
the
that's
theory is?
That's our understanding of what happened. We don't believe the decedents were transferred anywhere else other than that location of the Valenzuela, and that the vehicle was disposed of in a different location, and it was more likely a transfer. And so this is where, I know there's a lot of questions, and normally this extent of information would not be shared, and we've been cautioned, hey, preserve all of that, but that's where if you feel that we're not giving enough, we're giving more than we've been advised to provide.
Sheriff,
Yes,
any of the
Mike.
family members or people who lived with them in that house, persons of interest being looked at for any kind of connection to this?
We are looking at other individuals, and it's more for witness information supporting both the physical evidence and other statements that are made. And so at this time, we don't believe others are involved in the exact disappearance ending up in a double homicide.
Just to clarify,
Yes.
the narrative here, they were Father's Day, all this stuff happened, but the initial call was that they went to work.
That was
Monday.
correct.
So where's the disconnect?
There's been some other thoughts, too, that, hey, there's a lot of weird acting going on and behavior, but it can be explainable when you look at the fact they usually leave for work very early in the morning. Some of us get up and leave at 5 o'clock. And so we believe the incident of the murder and the initial fight that resulted in the murder happened the night before, on Father's Day evening, right? And so there's references to Tina being in her pajamas and so on and so forth, and when they last seen her. And so there was an assumption, I believe, based on looking at the information now, that they just left for work the next day. And so there was this understanding that, well, of course, they must be at work. And until work had called, hey, where's the thumb drive? And Tina didn't show up for work. And that all started to move the family. And, of course, just like with any one of us, as somebody we love wasn't where they were supposed to be, and their phones are shut off, and we can't get a hold of them, you're going to start to think clearly that there's foul play, right? So, but for us, we have to build that case, and that took us a little bit of time.
One more thing, just
Yes.
to clarify from reading the Form 4 here. You talk about, it says something happened that led to the shooting. Can you tell us anything more about what that something is? Are we just chalking this up to just being on meth and horsing around and something going wrong?
A disagreement. My understanding is a disagreement to what. We're not going to get into that at this point, and that's where we're relying on some other people as well to support that. But we believe right now that this is a very strong case, and we're trying to make it even stronger for the victims, Tina and Mike, and for their surviving family, because we want justice here, not just for them, for our community as well.
Sheriff, two quick questions.
Yes.
Were drugs found at the suspect's house, not that been in any quantity?
We're not sharing that at this time.
Okay. Second question about the victim, just a clarification. I understand Michael was or is a pilot with United Airlines, you know?
My understanding is that he was a pilot in the past.
The brother, Tina's brother, the man who hired the private investigator, they're of some discovered some way or another that this it seems like Mr. Valenzuela was at the home on Father's Day.
Yes.
And perhaps that he was having a discussion with Mike about his history as a pilot, and there was some belief that may have had factored into this. Is that something you're aware of, or?
I've seen a lot of this information, and so in our world, we're operating, this is a criminal investigation. This isn't an area where we can put some information out there or some theory or idea or a hunch, and a lot of other people can do that. We can't, because what we say then can be used to make a case stronger or weaker, because this is going to go on for some time. This isn't done. Just because we now have the bodies of the decedents, this is going to go on for some period of time. We don't believe that that's material to the case, if there was a conversation like
The
that.
bottom line is you feel like you have the one and only killer, the person who was responsible for these deaths, in Mr. Valenzuela. He's in custody, and there are no other parties that you believe were part of those two homicides.
Based on our investigation to this point, that would be accurate, that we believe that Jose Valenzuela is the prime actor here, the suspect that we've arrested and charged with murder, 2 counts of first-degree murder.
And no one else, you're not envisioning anyone else being arrested for that crime or as an accomplice to that crime?
That could come, and this is where I'm, based on where we're at, this is day 10, right? 10, 11 we're getting into, that this is very quick, very rapid, and because we had all the resources that we needed, there was never something that wasn't provided when our investigators said. Not somebody else. The people who drive this is our detectives. And so they do a very good job, and I just want to praise them publicly for their effort, staying up not only late in the night, much like victims. You know, we live this case. And so from Lieutenant VR to our detectives to other members of our command staff, the ID techs, we even had support from other agencies, you know, to use the facilities in Maricopa Police Department. There was a lot of support here. And there was a lot of goodwill in the community because there was a sense that, hey, these people are just missing and something bad happened to them. And so we're trying to give answers first to the family, to the community, and based on what we have, hey, we've made an arrest, and we're actually charging 2 counts of first-degree murder. So right now we feel very good in terms of where the case is, but we're not done. We're going to continue to work very hard until we have a case that Lando Voiles and his office at the county attorney's office feels very comfortable that they can take to trial.
And what's the status of Felix right now? Just to clarify?
He was interviewed, and there was conflicting information based on the suspect, Jose Valenzuela, and him.
So is he in custody or anything?
He's not.
It looks like from the Form 4, it looks like he had helped him out to cover the evidence. He was the one that drove the car.
And no, correct. That's what the Form 4 says. So this, when you're looking at a Form 4, this is based on the initial information that we had at the time of arrest of Jose Valenzuela and his statements. And so this is where what I was trying to get at earlier, there's conflicting information here. And so based on not only these very different statements, it's clear everybody's saying that these two were killed, and in fact they were killed through admission by Jose Valenzuela, but where it breaks is the involvement and what actually took place. And so that, for that reason, we do not have probable cause to believe that this witness is actually a suspect, and that's why I answered Mike that way too.
Sheriff,
Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about the search party? And I know that they were going on little information from your office for
Sure.
11 days. Was that, I know you mentioned that it was difficult, you were being careful, even though early on you suspected Mr. Valenzuela. Was the search party's activity almost like a strategic, like you wanted them to keep searching, or what was the angle of, well, we're not going to share with them, even though they're scouring the desert all over for them?
It wasn't clear, obviously, until yesterday, the fact that we had probable cause to make an actual arrest. So we allow and we build a case, and it took us much faster than it normally would with a murder, never mind a double homicide here. You look at cases across the country, and these are the normal responses from a community. To come out, an outpouring of love and support, let's look for them, because they're going to believe beyond that they've got to be alive, that we're going to find them, that we're going to help do that. We've expended a lot of resources actually doing initial searches, and while we had search and rescue, we have 5 full-time deputies and a sergeant. That's all they do is search and rescue. Simultaneously, we had our criminal investigators and homicide detectives that already started to kick things into gear because of other information. So these things were working dual track. And so our hope, too, we wanted to end and be able to talk to you today to say that both of these individuals have been found alive and are safe, and it ended this way. And so anytime that information and information that could compromise the investigation long-term or in the short term, we are just prohibited from sharing. So I ask people to understand that, because we can't have it both ways, because some people are going to say that, my God, I knew it was him the first day. And then somebody else is going to say, well, you know, how the heck weren't you out there searching for them this whole time? So you've got two trains of thought. We should have known the first day that it was this suspect, Jose Valenzuela, or we should have found the bodies. It took us all of this time to be able to do that.
Any other background on Valenzuela, what he did for a living, or how he may have gotten the meth if he got it on a routine basis?
That will be forthcoming, and I know that from my understanding, there's some other criminal history that's involved with the suspect. Probably relatively minor, nothing that stood out from the briefings that I've had, and just that they were friends. They were, more. If you're going to invite somebody to your house and it's Father's Day, and then you go back over, Jose is alleging that he brought them meth and they wanted more, and that's when they came back over to the house. And then that's when this big fight ensued, and then the murder took place. So we'll find out if that's true or if it's not true. And so this is where, we've given a lot of information to y'all today, just in hopes that you'd be able to have some initial conclusion, right? All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
If any of the reporters have any
For a follow-up investigation.